Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. On the podcast, I seek out and interview entrepreneurs, leading business people, authors, tech leaders, academics, and generally cool people doing interesting stuff in the service and experience space. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough for me. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Paul Greenberg. Now, Paul is an author, an advisor, often called the godfather of CRM. He's also a contributor to Punk XL, which was the last book that came out. But also, most importantly, I'd like to call him, or I can call him, I do call him my friend. Big
Amen.
Virtual hugs, Mr. Greenberg. Ah!
Right back.
And so I've been looking forward to this for a little while, actually, which has been brilliant. So, but for people that don't know you, Paul, I don't know where they've been hiding, which rock they've been hiding under, but tell us about what you've been up to lately, what you're focused on right now.
Well, lately, I turned 73 is what lately happened. Right. And kind of reached the point in my career and life where it was time to, well, initially I thought retire, and then I kind of moved that back, dialed it down to semi-retire, right? Which means for me, I'm busy doing things that don't earn me money, right? But I'm busy doing a lot of things that don't earn me money and some things that do. So most important to me, two things, I guess. One is doing work. I'll call it charitable, but that's really, it's doing social good work is probably a better way to put it. I'm doing that with several entities. And then the other one is, of course, back last September, me and Brent Leary, who's been my best bud forever, and also another industry analyst, such as I've been, in CRM and CX and customer engagement. We did a show called, still doing a show called CRM Players, which hit its 14th anniversary in January. And last September, we expanded that to what we call Players Productions Network, PPN.
I heard about that. I know about that, obviously, and because you invited me, or I got invited on one of the kind of the show strands on it, but I wanted to ask, come back to that, and just get an update on where that is and where it's going, but do it a little bit later. But
okay.
But what I wanted to zoom back to, because you've been in the sort of CRM sort of space for sort of such a long time, and you've been sort of watching sort of developments. I mean, how would you assess the state of the sort of CRM, CX sort of like space? I mean, is it in good shape, delivering on its promise, or is it same old, same old?
Well, it's a mix. I mean, look, CRM, and I'm deliberately dividing CX and customer engagement from that for a minute. The core CRM, which is operational technology, really, like in marketing, sales, customer service. People want to include e-commerce into it. If they want to, go right ahead, but I typically don't. But it's mature. Let's say this. And at the fundamental level, you look across all vendors, the basics are the same, right? Opportunity management, account management, blah, blah, blah. And, from the standpoint of that, operational maturity, they work fine. I mean, they all have their glitches. They all have their integration issues, even if they're integrating with their own other technologies. On a larger scale, you're starting to see, we want to integrate with the back end now. I mean, that's actually kind of a big deal. And companies like, especially Oracle, SAP is another story because they're changing their strategy altogether, which is rather peculiar to me. But Oracle, they've got the back end, so they're beginning to do that. Salesforce has MuleSoft, which allows integration with the back end, and so on and so on. But that's become a big deal, especially when you're dealing with the enterprise. The opportunities in small business has dozens and dozens of solutions to choose from and implement that are fairly they have some complexity, but they're fairly easy to implement. On the enterprise scale, what you're seeing and where it really is evolving, you're seeing CRM beginning to evolve from solution to platform. Well, it's not beginning, it's well underway.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, recently, Oracle has been talking about Oracle Fusion marketing and Fusion sales, but they're fully integrated and they're doing some things that no other, I'm not going to praise them for now. I mean, they're actually doing a good job, but if you look at them, there's really a CX platform that they're working with, and they're
Mm-hmm.
calling it CX. I have problems with anyone calling any technology CX because I don't think you can enable how a customer feels with technology. I mean, you can get them mad at the technology maybe, but going with the flow, so to speak, Oracle CX is a platform, really. And we're starting to see the play is platform and ecosystems now. It's not solutions and applications, right?
Yeah, no, that seems to be a bit of a sort of this kind of wave is like from time to time, I think it seems that technology markets just kind of goes in and out, and different things bubble up, and then you end up getting this emergence of good point-to-point sort of solutions or good point solutions, and then it kind of matures into platforms and suites, and it seems like it feels like there's like a lot of it feels like there's a lot of consolidation. We're on the road to consolidation into suites and kind of platforms, but it also feels like that it's the space is ripe, particularly if you look at the headache that is chiefmartech.com's kind of like Martech landscape kind of chart, which is like got 10,000 different apps on now.
Yeah, you know what? That's unfortunately become a disservice to everything, really. I mean, it's just, you're supposed to get crazy if you have more than 20, what is it? More than 8 choices or something, and you're supposed to go crazy after that. And we have 10,700 choices. You know what? If anyone's viewing things from the standpoint of the MarTech landscape, you're crazy, right? I mean, what you should do is, what do you need to do and how are you going to get it? And what technologies will help you do what you're going to do? You know this, right? I mean, the whole thing that I think you're a subscriber to it. I'm a subscriber to it. Graham Hill's a subscriber to it. People like,
Prem, you're going to say Silvana.
Jobs to be done. Service, right? Jobs to be done. Mike Boyson, jobs to be done is the way this works. And if you don't view it from that standpoint, you're going to be confused. But if you do, because ultimately you control the jobs you need to get done, right? So, and you work from there, then that MarTech landscape kind of goes away, and then you just start searching for what you need to accomplish the job you need to accomplish.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like going, it's a bit like going into a DIY or hardware store, and if you don't know what you're in to do or trying to fix, then you're going to go in and just pick up a bunch of random stuff.
Exactly.
I'm going to fix some stuff.
Look at all those hammers. Look at those are nails. I need all those nails just because I have no idea what I'm going to do. So why don't I just get some of everything? Right? No, that's exactly right. It's a great analogy, actually.
But there is a lot of stuff going on right now. I mean, there's just new tech applications popping up all over the space. I mean, what are you kind of most excited about in that sort of space? Where, because the tech is advancing. And don't say the whole Chat GPT as yet, because I was going to come to that in a second.
That's not what I'm most excited about.
Right.
Anyway.
Good. What are you most excited about?
You see, I'm not really excited about. Well, I don't get that excited about technology. I'm a geek. Don't get me wrong. But I like to play with technology, right? It's not like I'm excited that some technology is going to transform the universe. That happens once in a lifetime, right? Maybe twice. But what I do like is the fact that I'm seeing incremental and evolutionary maturity with technologies that make them work better. I mean, they work better. And again, to me, if I'm getting excited about anything, is the fact that we do have actual working platforms that you can build on so that you can build according to your need, right? And that to me, does it make me, just go, oh my God, that's amazing? No. But Does it make me happy that I'm seeing things get better? Yes.
Yeah.
And look, there's still crap out there and lots of it, um, but I'm seeing a lot of companies really build out some things that are excellent. Look, here's a technology I've kind of liked, I would say, and I find interesting as a sort of an adjunct. And this is mostly personal preference, I would imagine. There's a company called Support Logic
Uh-huh.
Q, right? And what they do really is, when it boils down to it, is in real time, they're analyzing customer service interactions for sentiment, really. I mean, and then they have a very quickly operating kind of a best next action kind of thing, but not quite that, but something where you basically, okay, this guy's getting pretty angry. You've got, 14 minutes before it's too late, right?
Yeah.
More like that. It's more like, a little bit of extra analysis in it. And I like that kind of technology. I like anything that actually starts reading emotional states and is pretty accurate at it.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, I think that's. I mean, I would put them firmly in that whole sort of the real time guidance or analysis and guidance sort of like space, and I think it's and one of the reasons I like that sort of space, not just because of the advancements in the technologies, but if it helps people do a better job and kind of reduces the wear and tear on them, then that's a good thing, because let's face it, that some folks that have to deal with customers all the time, hour by hour, kind of like day by day, it's a pretty heavy duty attritional job. One, I don't think they necessarily get the respect they deserve, and but two, there's a whole bunch of stuff that can be done leveraging technology and data and all these different things that can help them in that, in the moment. And so, yeah, I think Support Logic is a good example of that. And there's a lot of other people kind of playing in that space. I think it's that whole real time analysis and guidance and stuff is, I mean, it's emerged, but it's only just really emerging into the mainstream, right? I guess some people are just not there yet. They haven't kind of got to that point where they're actually thinking forward or thinking in real time in terms of that agent experience. But I think it's an interesting sort of space.
I think, yeah. And ultimately, look, I mean, if you look at the pioneer in reading emotion, like the first genuinely kind of almost awe-inspiring at the level they did it and still do it, even though they've been acquired, Clarabridge was the first.
Yeah.
I loved Clarabridge. I still do, even though they're Qualtrics now. But that was actually a good acquisition on Qualtrics' part. I have to admit. But I loved Clarabridge because I remember they were the first ones I could see could do like sentiment analysis at scale in multiple languages. But the trick wasn't that, yes, they can do it in French, Spanish, or Croatian. The trick was that they understood the cultures that were behind each of those languages. That cat in the background's Annie, by the way. She's a 15-year-old cat. So they understood she's coming to lick salt off my hands. That's what she does. Right. So what Clarabridge did is it said, we understand the cultural use of the terminology too, not just the fact it's in a foreign language, right? Mm-hmm. We understood the cultural use of the terminology, so we could distinguish, in a sense, let's look at it from the standpoint of, let's say, American, what's the word I'm thinking of? American, not dialect, slang. So right. Here, when you see the word, like you see let's say a millennial or a Gen Zers use the word sick. Mm-hmm. Right? They think that means great. You come to my generation to mean you have a fever, right? So, but that's it. Literally, but in cultures of countries could understand that difference.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me was staggering and could be done at massive scale. I mean, I've known them almost since they were found. Sid Banerjee is a good buddy of mine too.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I know them. I completely agree. I think it was a great buy by Qualtrics. I think
they're the forerunners of all of this to me.
Oh no, sure.
we're
I mean, I
talking about.
remember speaking to them and working with them 2, 3 years ago or something, and they were showing me their NLG stuff that was kind of coming up. They'd been working on it. It was product. I was always product ready, and I was a bit like, wow.
Yeah.
And then they got acquired shortly thereafter by Qualtrics, and I was a bit like, I mean, and no disrespect to Clarabridge, but Clarabridge always felt like a sports car in a Volvo shell.
Mm-hmm.
No
Well, that's
disrespect to
fair.
Volvo drivers.
No, but that's actually fair. I mean, I remember me and Ray, Wang were always, we were very early supporters of it. And we had this meeting years ago they call their conference C3, just like Calidus Cloud called their conference C3. C3 calls their conference C3. Got a little confusing, but we were at C3 and we kept saying, why aren't you bigger than $50 million? This is how long ago it was.
Yeah.
We couldn't understand why their income, the revenue wasn't much greater than $50 million. And it's to your point, right? Really, same exact point you're making is why it wasn't. Because people would look at it, see Volvo with this astonishing, yet if you looked inside the car, you go, oh my God, this is like Lamborghini level stuff, right? And but then Qualtrics, luckily was smart enough to buy them, got them at a decent price too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, such as it is, whatever decent means.
Yeah,
right?
well, they bought some horsepower, and I think they sort of needed it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things they still need, but they got some good people like Ray Gerber over there now, so it'll go.
Yeah, excellent. So, we sort of touched on it. Chat GPT, Bard, Ernie, that sounds like something out of the Muppets, kind of like generative AI. I mean, what's your thoughts on all of that?
Look,
apart from just saying it's just a parlor trick.
No, I don't. I've never thought it was just a parlor trick. I do think it's been still treated. Oh, that's Primo, who, by the way, is a kitten. He's only about 8 months old. Little tiger cat too.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, for all the people that are listening to the audio thing, Paul and I are speaking to each other on video, and there's cats all over the place. Well, there's two.
Okay, yeah.
Paul is a cat lover.
Yes, we have 7 in the house, and we have about 25 ferals we feed regularly who have an 8-generational colony in our backyard. So anyway, ChatGPT, Bing AI, everything. Right now, there's a problem with it, which is it's being treated as a giant toy, right? It's just a big toy. When the use cases get established, and it is following a parallel to what social CRM was, actually, interestingly enough. When the use cases get established, it'll become a tool. And at that point, it becomes absolutely, the level of impact it'll have is huge. It's already had impact on public perception. But it's a mixed version of that. I mean, Bing AI basically threatening people's lives is kind of a scary thing. And that the Google engineer who got fired for saying that Google's AI was sentient, which by the way, he still believes, it's not. I'm sorry, there's no AI that's sentient. But
I think the clue is that you have to type in a question to get a response.
Yeah. No, the other side is it only knows what it learned, right? Human beings don't work that way, right? So the right now it's kind of like, okay, so 2 analogies. Remember Clubhouse in the beginning? Going to transform how we interact with everything. I wrote this big ZDNet column at the time on stop being ridiculous. Right now, what was the story? Millions of celebrity and after celebrity was flocking to Clubhouse. I wrote a story saying when the flame dies out that these celebrity moths are flying to, then we can see if there's any actual value in Clubhouse. What it will do is leave a medium, a format of value as we go forward. It may not be Clubhouse itself, but the rest of it is just hype at this point, right? They left, it became pretty much nothing, right? At the same time, social audio hasn't been done well, but it's locked and loaded as a format for you to consider.
Mm-hmm.
All right, social CRM, you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we first started throwing down the gauntlet on the fact, I remember Pivotal was the first company that ever had social CRM with a
Nimble
product.
were early players in that space as well, isn't it?
Who?
Nimble.
Oh no, they didn't even exist then.
Okay.
Yeah, this is previous to that.
Oh, okay.
It was when social CRM was just starting.
Okay.
Pivotal came out with wasn't the very first product named this. There was some other company that had no legs at all that had done something, but it really wasn't social. But so the first one that integrated Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on into their solution was Pivotal with a solution they had literally called social CRM. And we put out a thing, me, Brent, others, on, okay, for now, we're going to distinguish between social CRM and traditional CRM. So we're going to call it social CRM. That was a framework, okay? But when it started having true legs was when Jeremiah Oyang and Ray actually, as an altimeter guys, put out the use cases for social CRM. There were 8 to begin with.
Right.
This is not 8, by the way. For those of you who don't see it, I put up 5 when I said 8. Right. Right. So they had 8, and later it expanded. But at that moment, it went from cool to cool, like, oh, Facebook and LinkedIn are now in blah, 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 to actually valuable and important. Now, of course, every single CRM platform, application, solution has social built into it. So there's no reason to even call anything social CRM anymore. It's just CRM.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, all of these generative AI are in the same state. The use cases, the real use cases where you can see general value as opposed to highly specific, super narrow, have yet to be fully established. When they are, this goes from toy to tool. And at that point, there's tremendous value in it, and it will transform how things are done. Right now, here's the thing. Everyone's oohing and eyeing, mostly because they're thinking, oh my God, this could have been done by a human. But it's done by a human who, A, doesn't know how to write, uses only buzzwords, right? And only knows up to a certain time what to even say, because it doesn't have it's blanked anytime after that training embedded in it, so it's not really like a human. They're just equating it in their heads human, and that sounds cool. But one thing I keep saying, would you want to hang out with someone who literally writes like that? And the answer is, God, no, they would be totally boring, right? So, and it is boring. It's only when it gets quirky is it interesting in that regard. But there are tremendous potential use cases for it. So I'm not dismissing it at all. I think when it becomes a tool and stops being a toy, we're going to be somewhere where it will have transformational impact.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm a little bit sort of more dismissive, saying is sometimes I think the kind of all the hoopla around it feels a bit like a parlor trick sort of thing right now. And I think what I mean by that is that it's like da-da-da, and it's like da-da, and there's a lot of kind of hype and press and attention, and it's like really in it's touched the mainstream. So it's like one of those one of these big technological advancements that has captured kind of the imagination, and so it's like it's almost like it's there, as it were. Now, like like blockchain, like the metaverse, like kind of like generative AI. It's like they have some use cases, but it's not completely clear whether it is a tool to value kind of like link. I mean, it's a bit more in kind of like on blockchain, but you could also say that kind of sometimes crypto is a bit of a Ponzi scheme. But
I absolutely think that. I mean, I think that's why I always separate NFTs and crypto and so on from blockchain.
Yeah.
Blockchain to me is a secure method of distributing knowledge and information, aka files and other things.
Yeah.
But secure and highly distributable and moves quick. There's actually an amazing use case being built by this company who's actually one of my co-hosts on PPN. It's called, excuse me. This is a post-COVID cough that just doesn't go away.
Oh dear.
It's called Relic Ticketing, and they've actually figured out how to use NFTs and blockchain for ticketing, and they're getting and it's actually, if you think about it, that genuinely can be a very useful way of doing things. And there was a precursor to it, which I won't get into, but that was pre-blockchain that was interesting in the use of electronic NFT-like things, but with blockchain making it secure and safe, they figured out a way to do it, and they're getting huge traction in entertainment, in particular.
And does that's going to stop touting and forgery and all those different things?
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
And the ticket, the NFT ticket, so to speak, it's not really NFT worth some money. It's NFT digital format that it can be used for more than just entrance to the arena, right? It can be used to buy food, and it can be used to, and not only that, they can give you the data you need to say, by the way, given your likes and dislikes, there's a sale over here on this. You might want to go do it. And all you need to do effectively, even from your seat, if you want to, is you can swipe, you basically can use your ticket, or you can go over there and use your ticket if you want to see whatever it is you want to see, or whatever it is.
So that's a really interesting sort of almost like application for, if you like, to fuse that whole personal information economy and personalization. You smash it all together, and that gives you a vehicle to be able to deliver that.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's, of course, constantly capturing the data too. And so now there was precursors to that. I don't remember the name of the companies, but there was a bunch of those that tried that and failed. I remember it because I remember being in touch with one of the companies. Well, the name is escaping me, and they had some experiments going, like the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team and some others. And the idea was very similar. Ticket used for multiple things at a stadium. But they didn't have blockchain, right? So it failed.
Yeah.
This one is, the legs are strong.
Nice. And so what sort of time horizon do you think we're looking at in terms of the emergence of these true use cases?
Oh, it's hard to say. I mean, I'd say there would be some well-established, viable use cases that at least make the case for the use of this stuff, even though they're not necessarily, there's not like tons of them, a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah.
Again, I gave up forecasting many years ago, because anytime any of us, all of us analyst types or influencer types forecast, we're wrong. So we are so wrong about everything. It's hilarious to read forecasts, which tend to be very not the analysts are a little better, but when you read the companies that are doing forecasting, it's fascinating how their particular offering, the market that they're in, is destined to be gigantic, right? Every single time.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't really put much stock in it. So 2 years is basically a guess.
Yeah, no, that's kind of fair enough. I mean, and it's like, as we know, and if the last 2-3 years have been evidence of anything, the investment warning goes on and it says the past.
Who would have anticipated, on a negative side? Who would have anticipated? I guess some people might have, but who would have anticipated the massive amount of tech layoffs?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, and almost a bit like I sometimes think that, is that just over exuberance, or is it kind of opportune on over exuberance on one hand and opportunity on the other hand, and all of these different things? But you look at it, just go, crumbs. Somebody's been smoking something, kind of like the way that they've sort of scaled up a little bit. But it's unfortunately, it's unfortunate that so many people are getting laid off. I hope that I'm pretty sure that things will bounce back.
Oh, they will. I mean, I don't think that's.
But I think it's like we're in this point where it's like the first 6 months of this year that everybody feels like they're holding fire a little bit.
Yeah, well, I've actually had many friends who have been let go, and these are incredibly experienced people, like people who are rock star level in their work, and in one or two cases in their visibility. but I mean, I'm not. There's not to me. There's never a justification for I mean, there's always a justification for people being laid off, meaning things happen, you can't afford them, and somebody, if there's no other way to do it, you end up laying off people. I call it justification, but it's painful. And the second, but there's no justification for the way sometimes it gets handled.
No.
Right. And I don't, and what, but look, ultimately, much as I can, look, honestly, I don't like business and I never have, because, business is basically sell products and services for money. And that's what it does. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I don't really never wanted to be a part of it. I'd rather do good. Right. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where my head's always been in my life. 22 years in politics, blah, 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 blah. Everything after that was based on that. But businesses job is to make money and to make more money than they spend. Right. So, you have these situations where they overhire because of COVID. They hired a lot of people, some of it out of enthusiasm, some of it just, if they would oddly doing some good to help governments, with various projects and stuff, they had to hire more people just to do it. Mm-hmm. But those people ended up being and there's also the, what's it called? It's when my business is going to let people go because you did.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like there is that sort of like there's a herd mentality in that, or there's an opportunity.
Yeah, and there's always efficiencies. The problem is companies that commit to the idea of we are here to support all our stakeholders end up being we are here to commit to support all our shareholders, right? And everybody else gets cut out, and that's not don't make the claim if you can't sustain it or support it.
Well, right? Yeah, but some people still can't help themselves and do make the claim and then do but then there are companies that are trying to go their own way as well.
Zoho had
which is what I was going to ask you about, because you just come back from a trip to see them in Zoho and Chennai, and they're like one of your favorite kind of companies out in this space.
They might be my absolute favorite at this point. I mean, the thing with Zoho, before we get to anything with Chennai, but the thing with Zoho that makes them unique, when they were founded 27 years ago, Sridhar Vembu, who is their founder, said that he will never, as long as he is at the helm of Zoho, nobody will ever be laid off. And he's literally stuck to that. And so that they're a $1 billion company. They are not small. They're the most profitable company, literally 28% in India, right? The number one in the whole country. Their impact in India, which is, as you know, population-wise, considerably bigger than here, is huge. I mean, I saw it when we went. But here's the thing. The way they dealt with they had hiccups too, like every other company. And the way they dealt with it was, okay, we will not make any high ticket hires. And at the lesser level, we'll slow up hiring. Mm-hmm. And then they didn't have to lay anyone off. In 27 years, or roughly 27 years, they're coming up on that. They've fired 22 people.
Right.
Right. And that, for cause. Right. So that's it. Everywhere. If you get a job at Zoho, you literally have a lifetime job. Unless you literally do something, illegal or whatever. But as long as you stay there and you don't do anything bad, let's say you're not a high performer. Mm-hmm. They offer you other opportunities. I mean, the thing we learned, which was astonishing, we go to Chennai and it's their campus. It's Tenkasi and Chennai are their two big campuses in India. I didn't go to Tenkasi because I had to come home, but that was the second part of the trip. The first part of the trip was Chennai. And you're talking about you're not talking, it's a campus with 12,000 people on it. It's a small city.
Yeah.
And building it look, they not only have their software developers and there's customer support people and their management team and their marketers and all that stuff. They have their own musicians and artists and schools and teachers and medical doctors and personnel and construction workers and architects who work for Zoho.
Yeah.
Right? They are Zoho employees. They have, like, I can't remember, but there's a significant number of farms out there. And some of the work they're doing on one of their farms is not just teaching agriculture to people, which they are doing, but also they have farms where they're experimenting to find sustainable grains that will be long lasting, as opposed to, I don't know if you remember the Green Revolution in the 70s with Norman Borlaug. That seemed a major miracle grain, right? Rice growing just huge amounts. Net result was, the reason it was growing is because it literally was depleting the soil to the point it can't be recovered, right?
Yeah.
So it was ultimately a disaster. But they're looking for sustainable grains. I mean, things like this. And they have Zoho schools, and in Chennai, it's high school age kids. In Tenkasi, it was little kids, right? I mean, the buildings going up. They have chefs and cooks who are feeding 12,000 people breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, right? They have dancers, right? I mean, they have the range of the medical side, medical instruments. They're building them. I mean, they're building a 200-bed hospital on the campus, but its purpose isn't just support Zoho employees. It's support area in Chennai and radiate it to rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're building portable ICUs to take out to rural areas that are fully connected, right? And they have Dr. Bala, who is a very progressive thinker, working on all these amazing ideas in terms of medical advance and how to support areas that are completely underserved. Look, during COVID, these guys fed 40,000 people a day.
Right.
During COVID. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, this is a company that is, they call themselves a software company. They're not. They're an infrastructure company that's devoted to public service. That's what they are.
Awesome. I thought I'd bring it because I remember I did. So I had Zoho, particularly actually it was PVK, who I know you know, on the podcast a little while ago. So PVK, if you're listening in, big shout out, big wave. But it's like, I know a little bit about them, but just sort of just generally what they're about and how they go about things, and how it's like a sustainable business model, but a sustainable and holistic kind of business model, which is fascinating and brilliant. And it shows it can be done if people get out of their way.
The closest we have in the US to that sort of model, and it's really not that close, is if you are a B Corp, right? A B Corp is, it's basically you get some breaks due to your commitment to public service and doing corporate social responsibility, which I hate. I like the idea of public service. Call it that. Don't corporate social responsibility. It sounds like, okay, well, you're responsible as a company, but we're sort of, how would I put it, putting it on you, as opposed to you're doing this out of the goodness of your hearts and minds at the company, right? So,
it also feels like with that sort of stuff, and I think that I see there's a lot of great companies that have got that, but it's almost a bit like some companies wait till there's a rule book before they do something, rather than just deciding they're going to do something different.
And some of them do it for optics, right? And that's sad. But in the case of Zoho, commitment is profound. And in fact, you're hearing it first here. I actually, one of the things I did while I was in India was meet with Sridhar, who was the CEO and founder, Sridhar Vembu, and Raju, who is the sort of, call him the US CEO in a manner of speaking, on working with them on pro bono, working with them on their public service work.
Right.
He's worked out we've been talking about it for a while, but this is the first time we actually got down to some detail. There's still more to be worked out in terms of the specifics of the actual actions, but or activity. But that's how much I love this company. I'm also doing some work with charities, some small nonprofits, I'll call them. They're not charities per se, but nonprofits. But in this case, a lot of what I'm going to do is right there with them, because I've seen the mission and vision that they have, and absolutely I'm 100% in agreement with it.
Awesome.
And they've always held true to it, which is the side. After 20 years, they haven't varied. They haven't diverged whatsoever.
Well, I think it's testament to the idea that, a lot of times people can come up with all sorts of well-meaning kind of missions and things, but then when things are put under stress, they tend to get kind of like either parked or cast aside. But as you say, over the last 27 years, Zoho's just kind of like, it started out as it meant to go on, and it's kind of kept actually, in fact, rather than starting with a grand vision, I think they've almost started with here's a vision, and it's grown.
Yeah.
As they've grown, and it's kind of matured.
Our basically never envisioned us being where we are now. And he was pointing out the window in Chennai at this gigantic building that's getting built on the campus for a lot of the activities that they do.
Right. So let's circle back all the way back up to the top where you mentioned kind of that you and Brent Leary, because you've been doing the CRM players for the longest kind of time now. Is it 14 years or something you said?
14 years out of January.
Which makes you 2 years older than this podcast, which was 12 years old in January.
Congratulations. I mean, that's serious.
That's crazy. But now you've kind of like spun it out or expanded it into this Players Production Networks, which sounds like, I know you've got a Yankees top on there now. It sounds like a sports network. I think that's probably a little bit intentional.
Yes, it was.
So tell me about it and kind of, I know you do things because you like them and it's fun and everything else, but like, what are the plans and kind of like, what's the big aim? Because I know you got some real kind of clear thoughts around the need for media and production, and particularly in this space.
So to your point, we had the players for 14 years. We got a pretty good global audience. We're well known in the industry. But when you look at the industry overall, it's still we see two things. One is millennials are literally starting to run the big companies as well as the smaller ones. Millennials are in their early 40s at the upper end at this point, right? And then Gen Z has entered the workforce, and even at some level beginning to enter, we call it middle management. And again, I'm broad brushing it here, but the way they consume content is very different than the way Gen X and baby boomers like me consume it. However, we have been impacted by them more than they've been impacted by us on that content consumption. Somebody once said to me, "Why is that?" I said, "How many kids do you know listen to their parents?" Right? So, so the thing is, a lot of the companies in the B2B space, but even in the B2C space, haven't figured out the fact they've got to create and distribute that content differently than they have in the past. Mm-hmm. Like 10, 12 years ago, white papers and webinars with PowerPoints, just the norm. Now, you're kind of crazy if you do them, right? Because people will download it, let's say a white paper. They're not going to read it, though, right? They just download it. Right? They may or may not watch. Look, when it comes to webinars, you register, let's call it, I'm picking a number, 500, 45 will actually listen live. Others, if they listen at all, are only registering so they can get the link to do it on demand whenever they feel like it, if they feel like it, and it often gets lost in there, and they don't like PowerPoints anyway. Like webinars tend to be better when they're conversational now.
Yeah.
Right? So what's happened, though, on the other hand, how are we see these millennials and Gen Zers consuming video, audio, podcast, like working out, listening to podcasts, watching videos on, you name it, the platform. It could be YouTube, it could be TikTok, it could be wherever, but they're watching video. If companies don't recognize that distribution and also the channels are changing, YouTube's still huge and will remain huge for a long time. And with YouTube Shorts, which was, because of the impact of TikTok in particular, it will generate a whole new level of YouTube interaction. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of new channels showing up, and the formats are changing even in terms of video and length and things like that. So we created PPN as a influencer-focused digital broadcasting network. And the idea was to experiment a lot with new forms of creation and distribution, and then, of course, drive consumption. Now it's very early, and also let's say the handicap we're operating under is Brent's Gen X and I'm baby boomer, right? So our audience naturally is not necessarily millennial or otherwise, but we're remedying that. And we do have some millennial, impact with millennials. So we create a highly experimental network. So for example, right now, we launched it September 26th. It's still new. We're only not even 6 months in yet. Mm-hmm. We have 6 shows, the 6 which launched a week ago or 2 weeks ago. We have a 7th coming on March 17th and another one coming on in May. But here's 2 ideas. We have the baseline one, like Sear and Players is still the anchor show. And again, we have a real audience there. But here's the experiment. For example, when COVID hit, we created a happy hour. We've done about 165 of them since, right? We haven't missed. Well, we do. Occasionally we don't. But like last week, we're in Chennai, so we didn't. We've had over 1,000 unique individuals coming to the happy hours. But we have a core group of about 25 or 30 who have been on it, probably at least 100 each.
Right.
And those, we gave them a show. So it's a show right now that has, if you're really counting the active ones as opposed to the number who signed up for the show, 8 or 10 active hosts.
Right.
And who has an 8 or 10 active host show? Nobody. I looked around. There is no community hosted show anywhere. But those guys, they've just finished their 11th episode. The hosts vary from week to week. They have themes they're working off. It's called In the Hot Seat. It's their show.
That's the one I've been on.
Huh? Yeah, well, that's right. You've been on it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, so you know that. Then we have another show, which is not unique in terms of the format, but it's unique in terms of the format for the audience it's directed at, which is one I do with Kenny Lowers, the former head of marketing for the Golden State Warriors basketball team, and it's called Engage with Paul and Kenny. Mm-hmm. And it's in the format of a late night talk show. And we have a house band, and we drink whiskey on the show and talk about the whiskey. We have a business guest. But for example, the show that dropped this yesterday, the business guest was this guy, Jeff Nicholson, who's been global head of CRM at Pega,
Oh yeah, I know Jeff.
Wedo, things like that. Who just
this will go out in a few weeks. So the date reference is the 28th of February because the 1st of March.
Thank you. Oh yeah. So okay, February 28th, we dropped the show, but it was Jeff Nicholson, not business leader per se, but business leader and Renaissance man. And we showed the fact that he's a lead singer for a band, and he was our musical guest too. We showed him making his own maple syrup. We showed him building his own car. We showed him with patents and cabinetry and woodworking. I mean, on and on and on. The second guest, the segment is the business segment, and then there's a dialogue with me and Kenny, business segment. Third segment is cultural. So the first guest we ever had is actually a U.S. renowned, at least, if not a world renowned chef named Tyler Florence, who's considered he was our first guest. So we had the idea is culture, right? Mm-hmm. It's not with the idea. Look, we don't need personalization. We need humanization, right? And that's one theme of the actual of the network, which is people are much more rounded. They're just talking business stuff all day and night. And we need to give them things that may have a business tint, but ultimately we're talking about things that music and art and literature and food and so on. Our second guest was one of the most super well-known music talent guy, 40 years in the guy we had on this, the last show, February 28th show, was Dr. Nicholas Hahn, who's a famine fighter. And he actually is the guy who developed the standard for what's called the famine, meaning there's 5 levels of food crisis. He's the guy who developed the standard, and it triggers international actions accepted in 55 countries. The UN uses it. Triggered if he and 4 others make the determination as to the level. And once that level, it triggers actions based on the level. he was broadcasting to us from Somalia, right?
Right.
But again, the idea is subject areas that are not business.
Yeah.
When we had Sridhar Vembu was our first pilot guest, part of the discussion was how doing this form of yoga, he can stand on his head for 7 minutes. And we had a picture of him standing on his head, right? And well, I found out actually on my trip, he now can do it for 11 minutes.
Wow.
Right? So, yeah. So that's what I mean. So it's experimental in the sense that what B2B audience, although Kenny has B2C people, what B2B audience is no one's had a late night talk show format before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I think it's also kind of the, despite all the kind of the, all the different sort of like web and digital technological kind of like forces, and then things are becoming increasingly automated. Actually, the truth is that, particularly in a B2B sort of format, business is still human.
Yeah.
Right? It's built on relationships, and you get to know people, you spend time with people, you understand them, and those things last for a long time. And so I guess it's trying to shine a light on that and say, hey, look, you should talk to people about other things.
Find out the idea is millennials and Gen Z are taking over. You need to understand what that means for creation and distribution and follow the lead here. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is humanization, not just personalization. Mm-hmm. It was mission critical. There's a third one, but I keep forgetting it. It's oddly like I literally have a complete brain freeze when it comes to the third one, even though it's a pillar and I don't remember it. So there's a third one that if somebody pings me, I'll go look it up. Right. So
we'll give you like a 2 legs with a 3-legged stool. And kind of like, that's your kind of like crossword puzzle.
You want to sit safely? Ping me.
Yeah, exactly. So Paul, I always enjoy spending time and having a chat to you because it's like, I love the stuff that you're up to. I always learn a lot. And what I've been doing actually, well, first of all, do you want to talk about anything else before I ask you kind of like one final thing?
I'm in your hands, man. Keep in mind, I learn from you too every time I'm on this show, right? I mean, I do. And I love it. But I learn from you when I'm off the show talking to you too. I mean,
yeah, well, exactly. Thank you. So tell you what we'll do. Here's one thing we've been doing at the end of these kind of shows, because I've been trying to, you might like this. I've been saying that lately I've been finding myself wake up in the morning over a cup of coffee and you end up doom scrolling, going like, you're looking for kind of like, show me the ray of sunlight sort of thing. And so what I've been doing is asking people at the end of the most recent interviews is to tell me what's the most interesting, exciting kind of thing that made you smile that you've seen in the last week.
In the last week? Yeah. Well, I was in Chennai a week ago. So, I mean, if I'm picking that was always making me smile because you're just seeing all these amazing and wonderful people. And I mean, there's so many of them in one place. People that they make you happy that you get to know them.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's just you yourself feel great that they are in effect blessing you. They're not literally doing this, but blessing you with their presence, even though they don't think that. They just are humble, lovely human beings. That's been the thing that I love being around people like that. And I got the opportunity to be around a lot of people like that, including many of my friends. I got to see also of the 15 analysts there, I knew 13. So I'm seeing all my friends in this environment. So I just made me really happy. As long as that flight was to and from, it still made me super happy that I was there.
That's awesome. Well, I will make sure I kind of like when this goes out, I'll make sure I tag some folks from Zoho to make sure they've got a big.
I will also let them know.
Shout out on the podcast. But so just to wrap it up for the live kind of part of it, Paul, just want to say thank you for everything, man.
Mutual, totally mutual. I again, you're like, to me, you have mentally at least, you always have about. I'm always hugging you, so that's literally you're that wonderful a person.
Thank you, sir. A very virtual hug.
Right.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.